Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching. This is Erin. And for those of you who enjoyed my last few podcasts, we have Todd Norian back on the podcast. Hi, Todd.
Hello, how's it going?
Oh, it's awesome. I'm so happy to have you back. You're a delight.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be back.
Yay. In celebration of Todd coming to Thrive again, December 1st through the 3rd, and we're more than halfway sold out as far as spots, which is wonderful.
Mm.
We're just getting out. Todd is doing a series of workshops together, sort of an immersion. It's called Align with the Divine. And so we thought that it would be interesting to talk about, like, what is the divine and how does one align with the divine and what is involved in that process? So, Todd, could you guide us a little bit on how to get there?
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking about this workshop, Align with the Divine, but then, well, what is that? Um, how do we make it real? And what is all that? So, in a way, it's like, well, we have to understand, like, what constitutes the divine. And it kind of depends on what tradition you come from, but I thought I would offer the tantric perspective from the non-dual Shiva Shakti Tantra perspective, because it's such an empowering and beautiful idea of the divine, which is not something outside of us, but the divine is actually in us as us. And so we sort of take this premise that the one universal energy, which is sky, which is the first essential of Ashaya Yoga. I'll get into how the four essentials relate to this, but the universe decides out of its own delight to limit itself to become us, so that the formless, which we think of as divine, there's no form in divine, the formless becomes embodied. So it's like there's sky element, there's earth element, but earth is sky condensed. So we can see that all the qualities of vastness of the sky, this unbounded freedom, bliss, joy, like all those qualities that we associate with sort of our infinite universal nature, are already in us as us. And why does the universe do that? Well, the myth is that Shiva, who represents the universe, out of his own delight, wanted to see itself, so it limited itself to be able to see itself. In the limitation, it had to forget its true nature. Like, hello, that's us, in order to have the
I forget all the
joy.
time.
That's it. In order to have the joy of remembering. Like, you can't remember anything unless it's preceded by forgetting it. And the thing is, we're very quick to rush and judge that forgetting is bad. The state of non-remembrance is really bad, but it's not, it's impersonal. Like, there's no sort of judgment attached to it. I mean, other than what we put on ourselves.
Sure.
And I don't know if I said this last time, but it's worth repeating, that like your eyes have never seen your face. Unless you have like shrimp eyes or something where they can go out and look back like this. You've only seen your reflection in a mirror. That's not you, that's your reflection.
Right.
And maybe we see ourselves through our relationships. When I was married, it's like, well, if you care to see, get married or get into a committed relationship, and you'll see way more than you ever cared to know about yourself.
Woo, yes.
But that's part of the joy too.
Yeah.
So for the universe to know itself, it has to limit itself so that it can wake up to see itself again. So that's sort of this notion. And what's beautiful is that we didn't really get into all the features of the statue, but that Nataraja, behind me, the Shiva Nataraj, which means dance of the cosmic Lord, is the expression of the divine. So if we just know the statue, what it all means, the iconography, we'll know what we mean by divine. So I thought I would take apart the statue a little bit so we can see different components. And my goal is to get to what are the 5 divine actions that Nataraja is doing, because we are Nataraja, we are the divine. So if we can understand that during any time we're doing one of these 5 actions, like Nataraja is doing them, because that's what the divine does. It's called the Pancha Krityas, which are the 5 divine actions. It'll give us a little start into what we mean by divine. And then aligning with the divine really means that we come to a greater understanding and our ability to release the resistance to these 5 actions. Just let me say the 5 actions right away, because I'm tempting myself too much. So
Go for it.
the first act is creation. That it's called Shrishti, which is really the process by which the formless becomes form. Creation, from the subtle to the gross. There's a stepping down in vibration to be able to have something solid. And we know that because sort of our ethereal body, we have this physical body, but we have an ethereal body. Science has electromagnetic body. You can even feel it if you rub your palms together really fast and then hold your palms a few inches apart and just sense the space in between. You'll feel the magnetic pull. There's tingles. And then if you move your hands just a little bit in and out, or even side to side, you'll feel a little.
Oh, that's fun. I can feel it. I haven't done this in a while. This is.
Yeah, it's not a magic trick. This is the life force in us, So the first step is from the subtle comes the gross. So we create something. So the second act is sustenance. So we sustain what it is that we create, or we could say we're born and then we live for a while. So sustenance, called stiti. Then samhara, which is the dissolution of that form back into the subtle. So there's a shift from gross to subtle. And we can think, well, maybe that's what happens when we pass away, that we have to let go of this gross form. But don't you think there's something that lives on? I feel it, I sense it, that there's a subtle energy, the you-ness that is so essentially you continues. And we read about it in some of the yogic scriptures and books. The Tibetan Book of the Dead talks about how we take our samskaras and this soul transmigrates from body to body, also known as reincarnation. But anyway, so we think that, this dissolution, samhara, is really the act of letting go, which is really, really important. Because if we're really attached to something that we're not getting that we want, we will suffer if we're that, if we hold the attachment. And all attachment is based on not wanting life to change.
The Abhinivesha?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, okay.
Maybe.
Abhinivesha is the 5th klesha, which is fear of death, clinging to life. But it's really the same thing. It's not wanting anything to change. But we know that in the spiritual path, as heart followers, that the thing that never changes is change itself. Change is just a constant. So we try to develop detachment so we're not so attached, so that as life changes, we flow with the change. And I just had this reflection recently that grief, which is a very, very important emotion to feel, one of the layers of grief is that our loved one changed, but we didn't. We didn't want that change to happen. But as we grieve and we start to understand no change is inevitable, and when we can align with the divine, which is always creating, sustaining, and then dissolving something, we start to shift, and the grief starts to shift into gratitude. And it becomes less about, what we've lost, and more about what did we gain? What did that being give to me that filled me with so much love? And then all you have to do is think of that person after they're gone, and you get full with the gratitude for having the dance with this person, I'm not saying we shouldn't grieve. It's all necessary, but so much when we get it so attached, we get stuck in the loss and we live in loss. Like, oh, I'm so sad all the time. You know, we're not designed to be sad all the time. Like our true nature is joy, but we want to feel that sadness. So it's not pushing it away. But when it starts to really integrate in us, when we've accepted it fully, then we start to focus on what we've gained. We can actually see what we gained. And that's where grief turns to gratitude. The grief has the shift into gratitude, and then we move on. You know?
I love that. And that it's so true. The shift of grief to gratitude. I've experienced that a couple times in my life. And this sort of when you're too attached to the physical form, it sort of blocks you from seeing, like you said, this gift that they gave you that's more in like the subtle realm that you can now connect with at any time.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
So it's almost like, you know, we're human and divine all at the same time. So we must grieve. And that's part of it, you know. It's like when we forget, then we have the joy of remembering again. So these three of the 5 acts is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, which probably many of your listeners have heard of, which is sort of the triune Hindu godhead kind of a thing. Yeah, there's Brahma, the creator, and Vishnu, the sustainer, and then Shiva, the destroyer, you know, or really he's the one that, the energy that transforms us. So those 3 actions are happening. But what Tantra does is it adds 2 more actions. The first is concealment, which is what I was talking about, is that Shiva's arm, one of his arms comes across and is right in front of his heart. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
It's there.
Beautiful.
So this is his arm of concealment.
Mm.
He's concealing his heart. Okay, so we can't know all there is to know about life or ourselves. Tantra says that we can only know 25%. 75% is always unknown and concealed to us. Is that true? Oh, I'll leave that as a contemplation. Your listeners can try to figure that out.
It's so specific, the 25%, but it makes sense. I mean, there's so much. How could you possibly know all of it?
Yeah, yeah. And at the end of his arm of concealment is the Dola Mudra that points to the answer to concealment, which is grace. And this is the lifted foot of grace. So he's saying, yes, we are concealed. The heart hurts. The heart gets wounded. The answer is grace. We need to open to something bigger. We need to entertain the idea that our greatness is knowing that we're greater than ourselves. That we know that we're part of this larger fabric than just our individual self. Okay. So that is the 4th action, concealment. And then the 5th is the power of revelation. And just like remembering, we can't have a revelation without concealment. So they go together. And all that is demonstrated on this little guy that he's standing on. The whole dance is on the back of Apasmara Purusha. You can see it's like a little creature there.
Yeah.
And there he is. This is
his little face there.
Yeah. Well, this is a snake of desire is there. And then I think you can see a little.
Yes.
There we go.
There he is. That's really clear. Yeah.
Apasmara Purusha means away from remembering. Apas means away. Apasmara means away from remembering. Purusha is like the divine, so forgetfulness. But this is really the imp of forgetfulness, which is the ego. But in the Tantra, it represents the blessing of forgetfulness. And it's a blessing because we would never have the joy of remembering if we weren't able to forget. And remember that concealment and forgetting is the process by which the universe self-conceals, which is sva prachodana, in order to sva prakasha, which means in order to reveal the true nature of its light, it has to shadow itself. And what I like about this is it's very empowering. no one is concealing me. My parents, my teachers, like all the shame. And in my book, I talk about how like one of my issues was unworthiness because I had so much shame in my youth, that no one is doing that to us. It's really the meaning that we're assigning to the experiences we're having. So when I can own my shame and sort of pull back the reins of blame is always making it's separating me from my power.
Yeah, exactly. It's disempowering.
Yes. So you think of to really, Brene Brown, I love her work, by the way. She talks about, claim your shame, otherwise shame will claim you. And you reclaim it by naming it, to be able to talk about it,
Sure.
and say it, really cuts shame off at the knees, because what grows shame is secrecy, silence, and judgment. Those are the things that make shame more. So if you never talk about it or never talk about your shadow, it will pull you down.
Yeah, like a black hole of just like down the rabbit
Yeah.
hole of self-shame and putting yourself down and separating from almost like a, and maybe in Tantra it's different, but I've always thought about it as kind of like you're trying to separate from your divinity, which, maybe in Tantra is kind of impossible.
Yes, it is. But it's really the shame becomes how we conceal ourselves. So when you can own that yourself, then you have the possibility to shift it. Because as yogis, we don't want to live in shame. It's a horrible experience that does not benefit the soul. The only benefit it does is that it gives us, it's a catalyst for us to come out of it and grow ourselves, but we certainly, I would never say like, okay, we really need to live in this shame. Like we're shadow people, let's just be in the shadow. No, the whole tantric approach is, may we shine light into the shadow to get the lesson from it. I used to teach a course, it's called Stand in the Gift of Your Wound. And it's the same idea, because if we think that our wounds are because we were bad, that's shame. And everything in life is for our awakening. So how can we apply that to everything in life? It's most people are very selective. Certain things are for my awakening, but I'm sure that was not for my awakening.
That is funny how they're sort of selective. And I love what you were mentioning about Nataraj and how the concealment, but then like the mudra that points down towards grace, because I would say that, if in alignment with what you were saying, shame, we conceal ourselves a bit, but then the way back to ourselves is through that grace. Because it's like when you have grace for yourself, you release the judgment, you release the shame, and you start to like thaw out to yourself and step into the light again and process it.
Beautiful. Yeah. And like that word process is such a misnomer, but I think what process means to me is come to a level of deep acceptance. And to get to acceptance, you have to surrender. You have to let go of the control of stop trying to change the unchangeable, or stop trying to, we need to resolve to stop trying to resolve everything. Like we stop trying to resolve the unresolvable in a way. And then we get into just being rather than doing. It's being. And it's that state. Look, the whole yoga practice, it leads to Shavasana. And what's the metaphor of the corpse pose? We die to our self-limitations. We let go. And when you really let go, you're able to do it because you trust that life has your back. And it's such a beautiful experience that for those 5 or 10 minutes at the end of every class, that we practice samhara, which is the dissolution, like may we dissolve back into the earth. So the kicker with these 5 actions is that they're all happening at various times and sometimes all at the same time.
Wow, talk about integration.
So you are divine if you find yourself in any one of those 5 actions.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to support the podcast and if it's helping you, please consider writing a review. You can go to iTunes or Google Play, go into the search bar and type in Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching, scroll down, and you can leave a review. This helps other people to find me as well as bumps us up in the search ratings. Also, this podcast is sponsor-free, so that means we don't receive anything for doing it. If you feel so inclined and this podcast is helping to support you and you want to return the favor and help to support any production costs of the podcast, feel free to give a donation to a Venmo link, Thrive Yoga Fit, or PayPal, Erin@erincoach.com. If you don't have the means, don't worry about it. We're not going anywhere. You're all good. But if you would like to give back, you can give back in those ways. Thank you so much. Namaste.